Hello, everybody. We're getting ready to get started. Let's do the count. Hello, everybody. It's the old bear from the Old Bear's Den of Bigfoot. Tonight we have a lovely lady coming on. My scheduled guest. She got sick. Uh, she's not feeling well, so if everybody could send a prayer for her, I would appreciate it. Miss Vkki is not feeling well. She's under the weather, and so please say a prayer for her. And tonight we have Colleen Davis coming on with us. We're going to talk dogmen and Bigfoot. She specializes in researching both those cryptids, and she's a very knowledgeable lady. Uh, she knows a lot about dogmen. I don't. I only seen three in my lifetime, and that was 30 years ago. And I tried to stay away from them since then. And it looks like they're starting to move around Ohio. And it's good to see you all here. So, what we want to do is we hope you enjoy tonight's show. We hope that we get y'all to ask questions. And I want to personally thank you for coming here tonight. Let's see who we got. We got Dirt Road Bigfoot. Hey, buddy, how you doing? Andrea, glad to see you here. Neil, glad to have you, buddy. And for the rest of you that are there but not commenting, I can't see you all. I'm sorry. So we're going to bring Colleen on. Let's get started in this show, and we're going to give her as much time as she needs to talk about dogmen and as much time she wants to talk about Bigfoot. We're going to be here for the show. All righty. Let's get her from the backstage. Hello, Colleen.
I'm here.
I'm glad to have you here tonight.
Oh, thank you.
So, let's get started into this. How did you get started into the cryptid world?
Well, I'll say I got my first interest probably back in, I don't know, 76, maybe 1976, 77. Way back when my parents took me to see my first showing of Legend of Boggy Creek. And I loved that show, that movie. And I tried to learn about it and read about it. And like most kids, you know, I checked out every book I could find on them. Just learned and watched everything, because back in those days, Bigfoots, Grassmen, Dogmen, all that stuff weren't known about. I mean, people didn't really understand what a Bigfoot was. And here I'm from Ohio. I'm from Northeast Ohio. And I never thought anything about them being in Ohio. I thought, okay, great, everything's out there in, you know, the Pacific Northwest. But no, that's just not true. When I learned more and more and more, I learned that Ohio has a lot of the same climate, a lot of the same precipitation, a lot of the same latitude, and as the Pacific Northwest areas. And I thought, we're not much different, you know, topographically. We may not have those mountains, but we're not much different. We have like a temperate zone.
Right.
And oh, as a kid, there were some things happening where I lived, and I can kind of tell people that. I lived in Summit County, and Northeast Ohio has a lot of waterways. Some folks probably know about the Cuyahoga River, Tuscarawas River, the Portage Lakes, things like that. Well, when you live in this area, you start to learn the lay of the land. You kind of start to learn how one waterway connects to another, and then another, and another, and another. And I think that's what got me started on it. But to be clear, and when I was in, I think, either a freshman or in junior high, I was still young. I was 14 maybe. Something happened at my house, and it kind of got me thinking, and it got me really, really curious. But long story short, my parents bought an unfinished house, and I lived downstairs. My room was downstairs, and it was built up against a hillside. So the distance from the outside ground to the gutters and the eaves of the roof was not very high. Average person could reach from the ground up. Well, it was cold, it was winter, and the moon was very bright. It was a fresh snow, and I was laying in bed and listening and just enjoying the night, right? Because the moonlight came in and lit up everything. And I had these two windows kind of above my bed. Well, I heard a thump, 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 and I didn't know what it was. And the next thing I knew, one of my windows went pitch black while the moonlight was shining in on the other one. And I'm thinking, why, oh, why did that window turn dark? And then about 30 seconds later, a little sliver of light came in from the left. It went black again. A little sliver of light came in from the right. And I thought to myself, there's something standing out there. And I can hear it. And I was very, very still. And I heard the breathing sound, like a heavy breathing. And I could hear the footfalls moving back and forth. Well, first I thought, okay, coyote, I'm living in the country, whatever. But then I heard the sound of aluminum gutters crackling or, being squozen, not destroyed, just smashed a little bit. And that's an unmistakable sound. And then I kept hearing more heavy breathing, a little bit of stomping around. But then in about another minute, what it was backed away from the window, kind of turned around, chuffed off, and then I could hear it running on the ground until it went out past one of our barns and then into the woods. So I never got to see anything. I didn't know what it was. The next morning before school, being curious, I went in the back by my window, and I saw where something was standing. There was smash marks in the snow and torn up grass next to the window. I saw prints, handprints, and then I looked up and I saw muddy, dirty, greasy prints on the gutters where something literally had a hold of the gutter and had their hands on the gutter as they were looking into my room. Well, 14 back in those years, nobody had a camera. My parents might have had a Polaroid, one shot or something like that, but we didn't have cameras. We didn't have cell phones. So that set the hook right there. I needed to learn more, and I studied everything I could find. Wasn't maybe 2 years later, my father was on his way to work. He had to go in very early to a foundry, and he had a ritual, right? He would get his lunch together, and he would put on a cup of coffee or a pot of coffee, and he'd fill his thermos, and he'd have a cup of coffee while he's reading the newspaper before he left. I'd say it was about 3:30, maybe 4 o'clock. He had to be there earlier than most. And his truck was parked right outside. And this was, I think, a 78 Ford, I believe. So it didn't, it was not modern. So his thing was he had to warm it up. He went to go start it every morning, let it warm up, then grab his stuff, and then go to work. Well, I was awake. I heard him getting his stuff together. I heard him go out the door. I heard him crunching through the gravel driveway. And the next thing I know, my dad, who pretty much wasn't afraid of anything, screamed at the top of his lungs, ran back in the house, slammed the door. Everybody got up. He was like white as a sheet. He was scared. He was petrified. And later we seemed to find out that he ran face into something as he was going around the corner, and it was going around the corner. But he didn't like to talk about it much. So to wrap that up, the very next night when he got home from work, we had a Kmart, and now we have all kinds of stuff, but we had a Kmart, and he went and bought one of those double cell lantern battery flashlights. It was probably the brightest thing he could find at the time, and he forbade us to touch it. So nobody was allowed to use it. Nobody was allowed to touch it. When he went to work, it was in his hands. And that gave him security, so he could leave for work. Well, that's about the last thing that happened where I lived. I lived next to a reservoir, a place called Nimisila Reservoir, if there's any Summit County people. And when my parents bought the house, I think in 72, maybe 73, we had neighbors. We had older farm neighbors because it was a farm area. And they would warn us. And they would say, watch out for the hairy men. Watch out for the hairy men. And I thought, are they joking? Are they playing with me? What is this? But these were several neighbors. And they're, watch out for the hairy man. If you go across to the reservoir or into the woods behind you, watch out for these things. And I thought, okay, great. So I grew up, and as a kid, we were in the woods all the time. We were over at the reservoir all the time. That was pretty much our entertainment. And I didn't see anything, but I just kept accumulating stories and people talking about them. So I kind of did a mental database, and I started learning about the Kenmore Grassman at the same time. It was a little town of Kenmore, which is between Akron and Coventry and Manchester, where I used to live. Well, Kenmore had a home, and it's called the Kenmore Grassman. And again, these lake systems and waterways, they kind of flow all over the place. The Portage Lakes was built around World War II. It was feeder lakes for the rubber industries like Goodyear, Firestone, Goodrich. Let's see. So there's canals, and then there's shallow rivers. Again, the Tuscarawas River and the Tuscarawas and the Cuyahoga River. Where I live in Portage County right now, at the Cuyahoga River right behind my house. So it flows from the east, and it comes to Summit County and near Akron, and then flows north up to Cleveland. While the Tuscarawas comes from the east, gets towards Summit County, and flows south down towards Salt Fork and down towards, oh God, Marietta and that. But they're shallow waterways. And we do believe these things can find a way to move through them. And there are, I'm going to say, about 100 smaller creeks and tributaries and things like that in the Summit County, Portage County area, along with lots of swampland, bogs, marshes, thick woods, sporadic. But once you, like I said, once you learn where everything is, you start seeing how things can move from place to place, probably without being detected. Is a lot of you folks probably saw pictures of a stick igloo taken a few years ago by Jody Cook and George Clapperson. And these were these huge stick structures, and they weren't cut. They had no tool marks, no saw marks. They were just found and broken. Well, I grew up about 3 miles south of where that was found. So I kind of figured out when I first saw those, they were in a brown field. There was a place where there was production and that for years, and then that went under, and then they tore the building and stuff down. They left a lot of stuff, a lot of tanks and equipment and things like that. But it was a brown field, and that's where they found this thing. So to back up, when I got out of the service, and I'd say around just before the Gulf started, right around 89, I was on my way north from where I lived into Kenmore, picking up an aunt to go to a funeral. And I was there, it was very early, and I come to a red light, and the red light was underneath the highway, underneath 76 224, which you will hear here soon. I came to the light. I looked to my left, and there's something underneath the bridge where the concrete comes down at a 45-degree angle, and then you have the pillars that hold the bridge up. There's something up there sitting on its haunches. It didn't look right. It looked at me, and it came to its feet and scampered down that concrete embankment, and I saw it. I watched it, and it ran behind one of those concrete pillars. It wrapped its hands or wrapped its arms around the pillar, but they didn't touch. But I could definitely see its hands. I saw its brown, waxy hands with its brown fingernails. I saw the hair coming down the arms and all around the tops of the hands, almost down to the first knuckle. I got to see his body. I got to see the hair completely covering his body. I got to see through the hair to see the body itself, because it really wasn't that thick. What it reminded me of was a teenager. But I looked at it again and said, wait a minute, there's no clothing. This thing's naked, but it's hairy. What is it? I don't know. So, but as God is my witness, what he did was he leaned out and looked at me and grinned. And I looked at him, and I got to see what I call these flat chiclet's teeth. They were pretty big. I saw no canines. I saw no aggression. It didn't look angry. It was curious. So later on, I would call that a sheepish grin, or some people might call it a different type of grin. But then it leaned out, looked at me on the left side, and came back centered, and it's like it had enough. So it turned around, and I got to watch it run up over the side of the embankment out into the woods on the other side of the bridge. And I was dumbfounded. I was like, I don't know what I'm looking at. I know I'm not looking at a homeless person. They usually have clothing, but no, not this thing. So anyway, I got the impression that it was a teenager. And from then learning more from other people and other accounts, that I kind of surmised that the parents were tossing it out to look and learn its surroundings. because I saw it just as it got daybreak. And it was already hot and humid that day. But that's when I saw it. I'd say it was no later than, say, 8:30 in the morning. But I had the feeling that it was sent out to learn its surroundings, and its parents were probably close by, because, again, it was very close to the Tuscarawas River and very close to the Portage Lakes and extremely close to Kenmore. So, again, that is another thing that set the hook. To me, I had to learn. I had to know what these things were. I had to understand them. And later on, I get to understand where the name Grassman came from. Kenmore had a lot of the Akron rubber industry. Goodyear, Cyberling. There were a lot of workers in these plants. And these plants were built right along the rivers and the lakes, because the lakes were built as feeder lakes for the tire industry. And people said, what are these black things out there in the tall grass? Because that's what you have, is tall grass. You have it to this day. And they said they saw these black, hairy, small beings, and they coined the name Grassman. So when you hear the word Kenmore Grassman, that's where that comes from. So I know that's not dogmen. Those are something else. But everything that's happened that I know of happened within about a 10-mile radius of where those igloos were found and where I saw mine. Even though I don't think I saw a dogman, I think I saw a grassman. And we will speed up a few years back to 2017. Okay. Northeast Ohio had a few things happen that were noteworthy. One was a fire along 76 224. It was a big grass fire. And this fire got out of control fast, and it burned a lot of that standing grass, a lot of fields, into the woods quite a bit, where we always thought these things were hiding, where they habitated. The fire had to be put out by several departments and lots of firefighters. It made the news and everything else. So then there was another thing that went on. In the property surrounding where that fire was, there happens to be a racetrack. Some folks might have heard of it. It was called Barberton Speedway. It was closed for 2.5 years, and then it was repurchased, and then the new owners wanted to open it. It just so happened that it was the weekend of the fire. Well, I was there. Okay, I drive a race car. I got the car out of storage, and we got it ready, and we were there for that opening night. Haven't raced in 2.5 years. I got there. I just saw the last small fire truck that were putting out the rest of the fire, because it came all the way up to the gates of the speedway, and we were in the pits watching it and hoping that they got it under control. Well, there was still a lot of tall grass in the pit area towards the woods, which is where they put me along with a few others in class, because they didn't have time to get it ready completely. You know, it was like, okay, the weather's good, let's get this done. And so I'm parked next to another driver, and we both get out about the same time. And I see he walks over to the front of his truck, and he's looking in this tall grass because something caught his attention. And he whispers to me, and he points. He says, "Come here." He says, "Look over here. Check this out." And he said, "There's something standing there in the brush, and it's looking at me." And I looked over, and I'm like, "Yeah, there is. And it's not a deer. There's something standing in the brush staring at us both." We were probably 20 yards from it, all right, because it was just off the front of our trucks. Well, it looked at us a while, And then we saw it kind of like run back into the woods and the swamps because we couldn't see all of it, but we could see a shape of it. And it wasn't all that big, and it wasn't a deer, and it wasn't a bear. It ran on 2 legs, and it took off. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
After that, the noise of the cars and the agitation of the fire pushed them out of their area. There's a creek that runs through it. It's called Wolf Creek.
Mm-hmm.
Wolf Creek goes from the swamps in the back all the way down a road called Barber Road. It goes underneath I-76 224. And then it heads down, I'm going to say 6 miles at the most from where that cemetery video was taken. I don't have an exact timeline. I know that it was in August. And things started happening in the area. Okay, first off, there was a highway widening project started approximately 2 weeks after that fire, where they had to close off the bridge because that's the first thing they wanted to widen and get finished with. So they closed it off from underneath. They staged all their equipment and their materials and all that up underneath the bridge. Well, I think they wanted to go back, but they couldn't go back. They didn't know how to get back with all that stuff there. The tarps, you know, all of it. Well, they kept following Wolf Creek. It's about, like I said, 6 miles to the cemetery. So something that's walking on its feet and trying to find food and shelter, it might take them a few days to get there. So it was about, well, say another 2 weeks after the fire. That's when we started noticing lots of strange stuff. There were a lot of farm animals stolen. There were a lot of missing pets. I saw so many dog and cat missing posters. I couldn't believe it. Never seen that many things before, but it was happening. And I'll say a few days after that was when friends of my daughter were on a lunch break from where they worked, and they were driving through the cemetery, Green Lawn Cemetery in Summit County. And they were driving through it. Now, the cemetery is a park. It's a very nice, prestigious, well-manicured type cemetery. And they're just driving around on their lunch break, and they come around the mausoleum. And the mausoleum, which you'll hear about more, is 500 foot long, easy. And there's thousands of people interred in it. But there's also thousands of people interred in the surrounding lawn around the building. Mm-hmm. The girls in question, they saw this and they watched it for a few minutes, and it was digging, and they're like, wow, we don't know what we're looking at. So then they decided, hey, let's try to record it. So some of you have seen this video. It's about 1 minute and 11 seconds long, and it shows 2 girls in a car, and they're recording this strange looking thing that's digging a hole in a cemetery. And they said, yeah, it's a she, because they could see her hair tufts kind of like moving back and forth. And they said it was a dirty lady. They said it looks like she's really getting down there. You know, she's digging with her hands. You know, she's dirty. Mm-hmm. So, it was about the next day, they sent the video to my daughter. And they said, hey, we know Colleen works with a guy by the name of Tim Stover. She's a researcher. See if she can find out anything about this. And then later that night, I get a bing, and I get out of bed. I grab my phone, and they're like, my daughter's like, can you see what you can do with this? Do you know anything about what this is? And I knew immediately. It's like I didn't need a map. I didn't need anyone telling me nothing. I knew where the cemetery was because I grew up near there. I've seen the mausoleum 1,000 times. So the next morning, I got up early, dark 30, grabbed my stuff, my camera, all that, and got a cup of coffee. And in 11 miles, I was at the cemetery. I got there right before sunup. So I waited, I looked at stuff, and then I waited a little bit to take pictures and really check stuff out. The sun came up. I got my tape measure. I looked in the hole. First, I examined the hole the best I can. And I kind of knew what I was looking for or wasn't looking for. I was looking for compressed dirt from a shovel or, any other kind of digging tool. Because when you use a shovel and you leverage that dirt out, you're going to get flat, smooth dirt on the backside of the shovel. Well, there were none. Nothing at all. All I saw were little clumps from fingers and big clumps that it dug out of the ground. So I measured this thing at 21 inches deep and 18 inches wide. And if you see the pictures of it, you'll see that the dirt is thrown in an arc-like fashion. So that tells me that this thing was digging from its hips. And it was sitting on its knees, because the pictures I have clearly show knee impressions. It did not lay on its belly. It sat on its knees and dug with a depth of 21 inches. So I, again, kind of thought, what are we looking at? 38, 40-inch arms in order to do this? And that's kind of what I thought of. But anyhow, like I said, I looked for any kind of signs that some goofball did this. Nope.
Yeah.
Whatever it was, dug straight through ground and broke the sods, threw the sods all over, started swinging the dirt whichever way it wanted to. And I was telling Victoria that anyone that I know of would try to do that with their hands, they are going to rip off their fingernails, and they're probably going to break their fingers, maybe even their wrists, because I just can't see people doing it. Now, if you have a flower garden or something like that with loose, loamy soil, many of us have used our hands to dig a hole to plant a flower or a bush or whatever. Yeah, it's easy to do. Your hands are going to get dirty, but you can do it. But going through your lawn or any other kind of lawn like that, I don't see it. And I don't see it at that depth and that speed that it was moving. Well, I left from there, and it was a Saturday morning. And this happened on a Friday. The park was closed for the business portions, but you could drive through it, so it wasn't closed to the public. So I'm sure several people got to see a hole where a hole should not be. And Monday morning, bright and early, I came back because I wanted to talk to the staff, because I had a video of this and they didn't. And I found out that it was a cover-up. All right. I'm not talking about a government cover-up or anything like that. I'm talking about a business cover-up. Again, this place makes a lot of money and it insures a lot of people, and it's very well known. So I spoke with the groundskeepers, and they told me in a nutshell that they were told to fill it in, make it look like a grave, forget it ever happened. Okay. So that's all they would say. But as I was leaving, I was driving around one more time, and one groundskeeper came up to me and said, "Hey, do you know anything about that hole?" And I pulled out my phone and I showed him the video, and he freaked out because he was like, "Oh my God, I've never seen anything like this in my life." But he's the one that filled it in. He's the one that had to plant flowers on it. So I knew what I was talking about. He just doesn't know what it was. And as far as I was told, the staff and the administrative staff were the ones that also told him to do it, because they did not want that hole to be seen. The police were called. Other entities were called. They investigated it. In the video, if you see the video, you will see what looks like a small SUV parked in the parking lot. Well, the camera makes it look like it's right on top of it, but it's actually 250 foot from the end, because the building's 500 foot long. And they ran the plate, they magnified it and everything else, and they got the info off the front license plate, and it didn't pan out. So it could have been someone in the mausoleum paying respects. It could have been someone on the grounds paying respect and just parked there. No one knows this, but we know that whatever was digging the hole did not drive an SUV. What else? Excuse me. I was at Salt Fork this past weekend for the Ohio Bigfoot conference, and I did a lot of talking.
Yeah, we were there too, Colleen. And I did a lot of talking too, so I understand.
I spoke to folks, and I think blah. Oh, that's better.
Okay. Colleen, before you start again, that video you were talking about, back when that video came out, a friend of mine sent me that video, and I looked at it, and he said, he asked me, "Is this a Bigfoot?" And I said, "No, that's not a Bigfoot. That's something you don't want to play with." And we got into a long discussion over the phone with it. And he finally he said, "Look, tell me what you think it is." And I said, it looks like either a dog man or a werewolf. And I said, looks more like a werewolf than it does a dog man. And we had a long discussion about those things and my past experience with that type of cryptid. And he said he was going to go. He had thought about going to that cemetery and looking around the outskirts of it. And I told him, you better just stay out of that one, because those things just kind of have an air of evil about them. At least the ones I saw did.
Yeah. Yeah. Now I can tell you what's around the cemetery. The business portion of the cemetery, I do believe, is in Akron, and it runs right along a road called Romig Road. And what's behind the cemetery is woods from Norton Township. Yeah. There's a wrought iron fence that goes around the cemetery, but it is so small a kid could walk over top of it. You don't even have to climb it. You can just walk over it. It wasn't made to keep people out or in. It's more decorative, probably to define the property line. But right behind it is woods. Right behind those woods, we start going to an area called Summit Creek. We go down Summit Creek. We go down the road just a little bit and we cross over Pigeon Creek. And a little bit farther, we cross over Wolf Creek off Summit Road. And it's kind of like a triangle. Summit Road and Barber Road run kind of parallel together, even though they're at an angle. That is where I got all kinds of sighting reports. Remember, I was doing this for a long time, like 30 years. And I've been collecting every piece of data I could find. And I'd throw my cards out there and talk to people and give my number. And I was getting calls. And people are saying, hey, I just saw some crazy looking creature thing stealing my apples off my tree. I just saw this. And I saw two of them going underneath the bridge for a creek and coming out the other side. And I said, which way were they going? And they told me which way they were going, north. And I'm like, okay, I know where Wolf Creek goes into. It goes all the way up to what we call the Barberton City Reservoir, which is extremely protected area. You don't want to get caught there. And so I kept getting these phone calls and these other reports. One of them was a gentleman I knew, his wife and daughter, and they lived approximately a quarter mile from the cemetery. You have to kind of know the area and know that it's in a depression and it comes up hills on both sides. So that's when, the water's going to go in that low. And he told me, he says, hey, there's something going on. My daughter keeps seeing a monkey man and she won't go to sleep in her bedroom. And he had a young kid. And I talked with her and she said, yeah. She says, I'm seeing a monkey man standing outside, because they had a little bit of a hillside, near her room. So things would have been elevated a little bit. And so she talked about seeing the monkey man several times, and it really scared her. Then it wasn't long after they left, they moved to Pennsylvania. And then I got another call. A gentleman was on his way to work on Route 261, not far from the reservoir. And he told me that he was driving, would be eastbound, and he saw something on the side of the road, and he said, it looks like it was munching on a deer. So he pulls over, he looks at it, and sure enough, yeah, he said it's eating on a dead deer. But what he said blew my mind, because he said, I saw one of the most scariest looking things I've ever seen. He described it werewolfish. He said it had its hands, and I first thought paws, but he said, nope, it had its hands and arms wrapped around the deer as it was eating the torso and the neck area. And he said, but I'm telling you now, and he emphasized it like 3 times. He said, this thing did not have paws. He says it had hands and it had fingers. And he just kept telling me that. And I'm like, okay, all right, well, now you're talking now, because something else was seen and has hands and fingers. Wasn't long after that sighting, I got another call from someone. Now, mind you that all these things all these people live in the same area, but they don't know one another. They're not next door neighbors. They're not far. They're a few blocks apart. And got another call from somebody that was scared to death because something was outside his house, and he did not like what he heard. And another couple told me where they live, and they live close to the reservoir. So I kind of put 2 and 2 together. Okay.
What was it he heard outside he didn't like? The sounds he heard outside.
Rustling things. Yeah, rustling, things banging. Just he knew something was out there that shouldn't be, because I'm sure they hear lots of deer where they live and all that, but he was out there that shouldn't have been. So that kind of went on for a little bit. I interviewed quite a bit of people. I interviewed a gentleman that lived near the cemetery who doesn't have the internet. He did not see the video. He's never seen anything like that. And when I talked with him, because I guess one of his brothers told him about me, and he got a hold of me. But again, he does not have internet, so he can't look the video up. And I showed him the video, and he looked at me and he pointed. And I'm like, okay, you're pointing towards the back of the cemetery. You know what you're talking about. So this went on for a little while. And the big thing that happened in Norton, there was a private dog kennel, and the guy raised German Shepherds. Well, all I know is something came from the woods, got into his kennel, over the fence, and it killed 8 German Shepherd dogs. And when I say killed, it was terrible. It tore the dogs apart. I have photographs and of the dogs in an office on a stainless steel table, autopsy table, or what have you. I will not share them. I will never put them on Facebook. Goes to my grave. You don't have to be told what a dog looks like if it's been destroyed. All right.
Yeah.
I mean, their hide was ripped off. They had broken bones. They had puncture wounds from 5 big fingernails, and they had the X-ray pictures, and it clearly shows 5 fingers, big nails, and broken neck vertebrae. Because whatever this thing did, one hand wrapped around a dog's neck and broke it, flung them around, ripped them up, and we're talking 8 German Shepherds. It was horrendous. I don't even like looking at the photographs, but I'll never share them. Anyhow, things kind of died down for a little bit after that. We think that they made their way to that reservoir area. It's a bunch of acres. I don't know how many acres, but a lot. And it's all protected. You know, they got the fence and the sign says, warning, do not enter, protected wetland, protected water, all that. No, you don't want to get caught in there. But these things probably could get their way in there easy. And if so, they found a place for refuge. About, I don't even want to say a month, maybe 3 weeks after that, there was reports of one being killed on I-77 before you get into Akron, near Vernon Odom Boulevard. And Vernon Odom is another name for Romig Road. So that would have been about a half a mile from Green Lawn Cemetery. And the story is that a tree was fallen against the sound walls, and the state cut it and trimmed it, but they didn't get rid of the trunk. The trunk stayed there for years, you know, until it rotted. The story is something went up the other side of the sound wall, climbed up the tree, and the weight broke, the branch broke, and dropped something into the path of a semi going southbound on I-77. We know a little bit about what happened. We did some research and talked with somebody, and I don't have any names. I don't have any companies because they were very, very quiet. And the story is there was an ambulance crew sent out along with ODNR and Fish and Wildlife or Game and the Highway Patrol and all that. Well, the news out of Cleveland got a hold of it. And they said, oh, bear killed on I-77. And I thought, okay, I'm interested. Until they showed a picture. The news showed a picture of a dead black bear with an ear tag on a 2-lane blacktop with yellow side markers. And I thought, wait a minute, that's a bear on a 2-lane blacktop. Yes, no one can deny it. But I said 77 is not 2-lane blacktop. 77 is concrete 6 lanes with white line and a zipper strip,
right,
you know, for waking up truck drivers. And I thought, they're snowing us. That's not what that was. So that's when we learned that someone said they were instructed to take this carcass to a place that they can't mention, which we believe to be an ODNR facility in the Cuyahoga Valley National Park. And that is all I know about it. But he did come forth and he did say, without giving us any information, that it was the most terrible thing he's ever seen in his life. He said it should not have existed. It wasn't a bear. He said if it looked like anything at all I can describe as a werewolf. So, okay, fine. Put that in the charts too, because it's pointing right at it. And things got kind of quiet after that. We didn't hear too much. So I'm thinking that they went to a specific area and they trying to live happy. But now I know of another person that lives very close to the reservoir, and she says they have them on their back property. So who knows? Who knows? It wasn't very
Is that
long
currently?
ago. There was yeah, that's pretty current. I just spoke with her about a month or so ago. And about 3 months ago, there was a city councilwoman that was driving down 77, and she told me that she saw what looked like a small German Shepherd type dog walking on two legs on the highway side of the sound wall. Like it probably came across around the sound wall before they, where they started building it, and walked its way down the highway. But she said it was on two legs and its arms were swinging. And it didn't look very big, but it kind of looked like a big dog. So, you can draw your own conclusions. Dogs don't walk on their hind legs. Circus dogs, but not a dog out on the highway. It's just odd. It's odd. And we really haven't heard too much more about them. I'm always looking. I'm always listening. I'm always open for any reports from people. So hopefully they're not doing anything. They're not active. And who knows if they're even there in the reservoir? Because just on the north side of the reservoir, now we have Copley. And Copley has swamps, big swamps. Could these things have, taken residence in a swampy area? It's very possible. I don't know what they are. And I am not going to take wild guesses. I just kind of like put two and two together again and just came up with my own theories. And maybe they make sense, maybe they don't. I'm not trying to profit a penny off of that video. I wished I could. My God, I'd sell it for $1 million. But I'm not. I don't care. I've gotten to the point where I quit trying to sell it to people. You know what I mean? Not sell it. I mean, trying to get people to believe it and all that, or any of my other stories. I've been a researcher for 30 some years. I did a lot of Bigfoot stuff. We'll talk about, hopefully we got time to talk about what happens at Salt Fork. I've got photographs, and but at the same time, I don't have to prove it. I know they're there. I've seen them. I know they exist. So if people don't believe it, that's great. I'm not going to try to prove it. So, but that's about all the Dogman stuff I have right now. I do know that they've been seen in Defiance, Ohio, and down in Hocking Hills. Yes. If you know where Hocking Hills is, in Logan, Ohio.
Oh, yeah.
And yeah, they've been seen down there. But as far as the other squatches, you and I both go to Salt Fork. We're both SOSP members.
Yes.
And we were there. We witnessed things that folks would love to witness. And I'll tell you a funny story. There was him, myself, several others, and a guy by the name of Jack Warren, and another fellow by the name of Mike. And we all bring our food. Half the fun of camping is cooking. Well,
yes,
Mike, that was to the left of my camper, he had his bratwurst stolen right out of his cooler. I know people think could be a raccoon, but nothing else was touched. I had for breakfast, I make egg and ham type little McMuffins, and I had a brand new package of Thomas's English muffins stolen. Now, Jack Warren had a big bag of peanuts stolen. And I know everyone's going to say, raccoon, she's nuts. But if a raccoon got into your stuff and say stole your hot dog buns or your English muffins, that raccoon's not going to just take that prize to its den. You're going to find shreds of paper, plastic, and tons of torn up, yucky, salivated pieces of whatever it took. And they don't do what you think. They would consume right then and there and make the biggest mess they can. Well, there was not one trace of my muffins, not one trace of Mike's bratwurst or any of Jack's peanuts. And you would think there'd be peanuts scattered all over the place. I call them selective thieves. My daughter was at Mohican Campground a couple years ago. She and her fiance, and something stole her steaks right out of her cooler. Didn't touch anything else. Didn't touch her hot dogs or anything. Stole her steaks. Yeah, what else? We've seen. Oh. I remember being at Salt Fork at the group campsite, and something threw a stick out of the woods and it smacked against the ladies' latrine. There's 2 latrines, wooden latrines, one hole. And it threw this large stick at the roof of that one-holer. I saw one looking at me through the tree line at the upper part of the campsite. It's a big circular campsite. I got good pictures of it at about 2 in the morning. And I was out with my night vision camera. And all of a sudden, I got what looked like a face, but it was a few feet back into the woods. And I took another couple pictures. And now the face was even closer. It's almost like it filled the clearing. And you can clearly see eye sockets, eyebrows, eye ridges, hairline, chin, cheeks. You can see it. And it almost has a Native American look. But I think it's the same one that was pestering us during the day. I also have a picture on the south side of what we'll call a watcher, which, okay, you've all seen the pictures of the heads with the points and, that maybe a little bit of shoulder. Well, that's what it looked like. You can see noses, or a nose. You can see eye sockets, but it's standing in tall grass, like weeds and brush that is tall. And it's standing, and you can see its head and its shoulders. Everything else is obscured by brush. And we got pictures of that. We also were there that night where I told you where I heard the samurai chatter. So if you do any research and you look up the language, you'll hear people say samurai chatter. And what it sounded like was actually 2 or 3 Asian kids playing in the woods behind the campsite. You could hear them giggling. You could hear them laughing. But there were no Asian children in the campsite. We both know that. But that night, we got all kinds of stuff happening. People, they were stomping around behind us. You could hear it. You could hear them grunt. You could hear them holler. What else did they do? I don't even remember.
Oh, there was a bunch going on. Colleen, Tammy Johnson has a question. She's asking, is it Mohican in Connecticut? I know it's not, but I would like you to answer that question for her.
No, Mohican in Ohio. There's a national park. It's called the Mohican Park, and there's a river that runs through it. There's several campgrounds. Even the crew of Finding Bigfoot were there a few years ago in Mohican State Park.
And I've deer hunted that area quite a few times. And that's
another thing I want to say. Right. And that's something else I want to say. Finding Bigfoot, we know it was a TV show, right? That's as far as I'll go with that. But they've been to Mohican. They've been to Salt Fork. I didn't like their methods when they went to Salt Fork, But when I remember when Bobo said it's squatchy, I know it is. Well, he's right. They are there. I don't know how many there are, but they are just like they are in Mohican, just like they are down by Hocking Hills and a few other places. Little town has been known for them. Summit County, Portage County. This is where I live. This is where Matt Moneymaker had his sighting in Portage County when he was a law student in university. Let me think. Well, again, I had a stroke 2 years ago. Okay, so I had to do everything. I had to learn to walk. I had to learn to drive. I went from a wheelchair to a walker to a cane. And I'm still with a cane. So I don't really get out in the woods anymore. I'll go sit in my truck and park and listen and watch. But I can't get in the woods. I'd love to. I loved getting in the woods. I was in great shape to get in the woods. But I can't anymore. I'm afraid if I did try and something happened, or if I fell or whatever, because I don't have very good balance. And I'm unsteady on my feet. So, yeah, therefore, I don't get out like I did. But you'll see me at the SOSP events.
Well, we will definitely, we can't make the one this month, but we are planning on going to the one in June. So if you're there,
yeah, I hope.
Just come over and sit down beside us. And
okay. Yep, you'll see me pull in a little gray pickup truck hauling an R-Pod.
Yep.
Because I'm getting the itch to go camp.
Yeah, we went. We were up there at the group campground about 3 weeks ago. It has been 3 weeks, and I had invited some of the people off of YouTube that I know pretty well. We had Nance from Vkki Bigfoot there. Okay. We had Icebox from Dirt Road Bigfoot. And we had Grizzly Chris from Outlaw Bigfoot. And we had Les Odell from West Virginia Cryptids there also. He brought his little boy Mason. And Saturday morning, before everybody got there, because we got there on Friday morning, and we set up camp, and Grizzly Chris came in with his daughter on Saturday, or on Friday, sorry. And we helped him set up his tent and did everything, and we cooked out, and we went up and now this wasn't Sosby, this was a different Bigfoot thing. If you remember Josh, he had, go ahead, Colleen.
I'm thinking,
young guy.
Yeah. Okay.
He has Asperger's.
Yeah.
Does that help?
Yeah.
Okay.
Now
he has a Bigfoot group now, and they hosted it, and we showed up for it. We had a meeting on Friday night. There was a bunch of new Bigfooters in the group, 8 or 10 different people that were new to it. And he asked me to speak to them, to kind of give them an idea of what, how to behave around them and stuff like that. And because I've been in this for 40 years, and after we had that, everybody kind of went to bed around 10:30, 11 o'clock. And then at 2 a.m., we heard a wood knock. And then within just a couple of minutes, they started whistling.
Oh.
So and that was a group. We had stuff go on. And then Saturday morning when I got up, it was about 15 to 5. And I went out, and I'm an early riser.
Uh,
I'm usually up before everybody else, 4 or 5 hours in bed, and I'm done. I can't lay there. And I got up and went outside and started building a campfire in the campfire ring. And I'm squatted down at the fire, building the fire. And Grizzly Chris was in his tent, and I heard thump thump, like it stomped its feet, like it got tripped or something, and stomped its feet, and then it growled. And when it growled, I stood up and looked, and behind his tent there was a big. If you go into campground, there's a camping area right here to your right when you first go through the gate, and then that little stretch of trees that sticks out towards the road.
right.
And then we would camp just on the other side of that little bit of trees and brush right there. And the back of our camper was pointing towards Parker Road.
Okay.
And when I stood up that morning, I looked, there's a big, huge, probably 12, 14 inches thick shaley bark hickory tree there. And there's a big bush beside it. Now, the bush is 5 foot tall or more. And I looked back, and I didn't have the light. I had the light on the canopy on, and I could see this dark figure with a head and shoulders and the upper chest standing behind the bush. Well, not to say anything about Grizz, he was snoring.
Uh-huh.
And I kind of surmised that it was coming to find out what all the snoring was. And what I was doing, knelt down, and it was paying more attention to me and to Grizz snoring, and it caught its foot and stomped its feet. Didn't mean to,
Okay.
because it was quiet. I never heard anything, never heard leaves, nothing. And you know as well as I do, they can walk quieter than a mouse.
Yeah.
And when I stood up, it saw me looking at it, because I picked it right up, right off the bat. And I started towards the tree line, and it took off running. And I got into the edge of the tree line, and it ran towards Parker Road and jumped. I saw it jump off the bank, and I heard it hit the tar chip Parker Road.
Oh, okay.
And at that point, Grizz woke up, and he's fumbling around. He's still half asleep. And he's going, "What's going on?" I said, "You had a visitor." And he said, No, we didn't have no visitor. I said, "Yeah, we did. It come to see what you were snoring, because you sounded like a sawmill, the biggest sawmill in all of the United States." And
I probably heard him doing it too. From my
yeah. And I went after it got daylight. I walked back there to check the height of it, and the top of it was right here at my chin. And I'm 5'11", and it was at chin height at the top of the thing. And this thing was a good 2 feet over top of the bush. So that would have probably put it in the 7 foot mark. And so we saw that one. And then Saturday night, I went up and did some howls like I did a few years ago when we had all that going on there in the campground. When my wife saw the 3 little ones, and I saw the female there at Jack's tent. And then Saturday night, we had that big male come in there and stomping its feet and growling at us. But that night we heard a tree break, and there were growls. And then there was this
fire. Yeah.
a goose that wasn't a goose, because you know how a goose when they get excited, they make that weird call. Well, this stayed in the
Right.
basement. It wasn't a goose. It had to have been a 500 or 600 pound goose to make that deep of a call. So
I
it's
can't wait to get
always
back. I'm gonna
active.
that.
So when we go camping up there, if you go in June, we're planning on going in June, and we will. If we decide to go out near Hosak's Cave or anything like that at night, you're
Yeah,
more than welcome to go. Be glad to take
yeah.
you.
A lot of they tell me that too. Like I said, I don't go very far. I won't. I can't climb up into the hills and things like
Right,
that,
right.
or into the
Well, I
valleys.
don't mean
I
that.
could
I mean we'll
talk to.
stay near the truck.
Okay, I can do that. I could talk to folks about other things that happened at Salt Fork.
Go right
Um,
ahead.
I I had a couple things happen. Okay, back up a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
10 years ago, I'm now 60, and when I turned on my 50th birthday, I went camping with some other investigators. You may know a guy by the name of Dave Nowakowski, Blue
Mm-hmm.
Tracker or whatever. I went camping. Then we were on primitive campsite number 1 at Salt Fork, and
Mm-hmm.
I didn't have my camper. I was in a tent. My daughters were in the tent next to mine. Dave and someone else was up in front. Well, one of my things when I go camping is I love to cook. Being part Cajun, I love to cook. So I made food for the group, and I'm not exaggerating. I did pancakes. I did uh, eggs, bacon, sausage, uh, biscuits and gravy, cocoa, coffee, oatmeal. Everybody wanted something different. So I set up the kitchen outside, and I was cooking for like crazy. But on that day, it was hot. It was early, and it was already 90s and humid. Humid as oh my God, you couldn't even walk without feeling it. And so I got done feeding everybody. I cleaned up my kitchen, and I had a whole bunch of food scraps. So I thought, well, okay, I'm going to take and dump them over here. It'll feed the raccoons and the other vermin, and it won't hurt anything. So I dumped my stuff. I only had to walk about 10 feet and
Mm-hmm.
dumped my stuff in the woods, thought nothing of it. Cleaned all my dishes up. It was getting hotter and hotter. And I thought, all right, good. I'm going to go get me a shower at the shower house. And like a dodo, I left my phone and my camera and anything else I had. I left it in my tent. Hopped in my
Mm-hmm.
car, my truck, and left the campsite. And I don't know if you've ever been there or not, Bigfoot Ridge.
Oh
When you
yeah.
go there, okay. When you go through Bigfoot Ridge, you have that very sharp turn, and
Yes.
that road that goes down to the cemetery and goes down to the lake.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Well, there is no stop sign there, but every
Mm-hmm.
so often I see ranger trucks, maintenance trucks, and stuff coming up the hill. So I get to that sharp curve. I slow down to about 2 or 3 miles per hour, and thinking, okay, don't want to hit anything coming up the hill. I
Right.
get to there where I have a clear 50 yards down. Okay, from the stop sign coming
Mm-hmm.
up, 50 yards down. I see the thing in the road, and I get a really good look at it. And it's in one of Doug Waller's books. So if you collect his books, you'll get to read it. But what I
Mm-hmm.
saw was a little girl, and she probably 5 foot, not even 5'5", maybe 150 some pounds. Okay, she wasn't big and bulky, but she was pretty. Now I don't know if you ever heard anybody call a squatch that or not, but she had salt
Yeah.
and pepper type facial features, and she had what I called a reverse raccoon, where the raccoon has the dark around its eyes. She had white rings around her eyes. She had like a salt and pepper hair, pinkish. You could see her hands and feet were pinkish. And again, she also had hair that you could see through. And she had, best way I can describe it. Do you remember Porter Wagner?
Yes.
Okay. Remember when he'd come on stage, Hee Haw or something like that, and his leather jacket or his buckskin jacket would have fringes coming down the arm? Okay. That is exactly what she had. Her hair came down in those strands at the bottom of her arms and her elbows going up to her shoulder. Her legs were completely covered with hair, but not deep, not thick. So when I say that you could see her body, yeah, you could see her body. And her face, she had a little wispy beard and pork chops. I think they all have pork chops. And she had longer hair up on top of her head. And like I said, she just struck me as pretty, a pretty little thing. But she took 3 steps. She went across that road in 3 steps. I watched her arms move. And if you've ever been down there, you know that on the left-hand side, there's a gully. There's a steep, like drop. She went down in that like she was a deer. She didn't stop to think about it. She just did it. So later on, when I went down there to investigate, I look over the side of the road and I'm thinking to myself, no way. You would fall and break your neck. That was before my stroke. I thought I hold on to every single branch, tree, sapling, whatever, to get my way down there. And I'm not going to do it that fast. It's going to take a few minutes for me to get down there. But anyway, that spot goes down the gully and comes up the other side of the hill. It comes up directly in front of primitive site number 1. So I got a feeling that all those smells that I had out there attracted her. I got a feeling it attracted more than her. But, they're very curious. And the younger they are, the more curious they are. So, of course, I didn't get to see where she went because I was in my car. But I just have this feeling that she was zoomed in on all that food scraps that I dropped over. I won't do that again. But then again, maybe I will. And then my other encounter in Salt Fork, do you know where County Road 51 and 52 are?
Yes.
They're the gravel roads that are on. All right. We go in there a lot. And I just went there at night, and I had people in my truck with me. It was a Ford Escape, okay, a little SUV. And when you come to 51, you find 52. So you take 52, and it'll take you all the way down, around that swamp down towards Parker Road. So anyway, I halfway down 52, and there's a pull off. You may have even seen it, but there is a pull off where you pull off the road, and a cable runs across, and there's room for about 2 cars. And then across the road, clearing. It almost looks like a natural amphitheater, but I don't know what it is. But it's like a dish, and you can walk around and see things. Well, here's what happened. I pull in to that little parking area. I get stopped. I have my foot on the brake. I haven't even shut the engine off yet. And all of a sudden, wham! We get hit in the back where my daughter's sitting, right between the back window and the license plate. It's only about an 8-inch sunk piece of metal. We got hit with a rock. A rock came flying out of I don't know where and beamed the back of my SUV. And it was loud. Oh my God, it was loud. So my daughter, she's half asleep. So she yells, "What did you hit?" I said, "I didn't hit a thing. I don't even have the motor shut off. I just put the thing in park, and I never even reached for the ignition switch. And then bang! So after I shut it off, and we all got together, grabbed our flashlights, and I'm looking around, and I'm thinking, well, maybe there was something across the street or across that road in the bushes and didn't like the fact that I pulled in. So I'll back up a little bit. You know how when you're out and you find stones on gravel and on dirt and things like that, you know how stones take a set, where if you were to pick up a little stone size of your thumbnail or something like that, it's going to leave a half a stone depression in the dirt.
Right. Right.
All of them, because they're trampled, they get rained on and all that. Well,
Right.
I got to, and about 2 foot from my license plate, there was a rock. And this rock was out of place because it was like sitting on top of all these little stones. And I knew that I didn't put it there, and I knew I didn't run it over. And I picked it up, and there was no marks in the dirt. There was nothing. It was like thrown there, fresh, no time to take a set. And I kind of looked at it, and I thought, well, that's got enough mass where it should put a pretty good sized dent like it did in my tailgate. And I picked up the stone and kept it. I still have it. But I have no proof that that was the stone. But I'm thinking it was. Also, I was with a guy by the name of Tim Stover. I used to research with him. We once went early spring, and we parked in that same spot, but it was daytime. And we went over the cable, and we walked that trail, which you probably know of. And over the winter, there was a tree fallen, and it was blocking the path. Well, we had to climb over the tree because you didn't want to go around. So you went over it. So Tim goes over it first. I go over it after him. As I'm going over it, I look down, and I see a golf ball. And it just hit me really weird. Why is a golf ball here out in the woods? Did it get dropped by a hunter or a hiker or what? Didn't think 2 and 2. But then I thought, I picked the golf ball up. I inspected the golf ball. It was a brand new golf ball. It had 1 strike mark. That's it, just 1. So, which led me to think, okay, people were golfing at the golf course about 2 miles away, down by the lodge. Possibly someone ball into the rough. Possibly someone came around who happens to be furry and picked it up thinking it was a toy, because there's a lot of juveniles. I think there's more juveniles than there are adults. Picked it up thinking it was a toy, and there was snow on the ground because it just thawed. And I think that it also had to climb over that fallen tree, and it might have dropped its new toy in the snow and couldn't find it. And I found it when the snow melted. Now, I could be full. I could be. But this is what happened. I explained it to Tim. I started thinking about this, and I thought, well, there's the only way that ball could be there. Either someone hiking dropped it, someone hunting dropped it. But why would a deer hunter have a golf ball in their clothes? It doesn't make sense to me. I'm not saying they couldn't, but it doesn't make sense. Did a hiker drop it? Again, possibly. Would you go on a hike with a golf ball in your pocket? So what I thought it could be, what it was, I think about that kind of stuff. That's the way my mind works. But I got no proof. I got no proof that a Bigfoot did it.
No, but it's a possibility.
Unexplained stuff.
And the thing that gets me is, the golf course is up next to the lodge. Is right there by the lodge.
A couple miles away.
How would they get from there to there unless somebody carried it or something carried it?
No one's going to hit it that far.
No.
Not even John Daly could do it. But anyway, I think picked it up, found it, said, I got a new toy. And probably dropped it trying to cross over that tree. And it fell in the snow and it couldn't find it. But
Yeah.
again, that's my thoughts, my theory. But it makes sense, you know. And there's a lot of strange stuff like that happens at salt fork. And I think one of the reasons why I see what I do, and I'm not mystical, and I'm not anyone special. I'm a veteran. In the Army, we are taught to become what they call trained observers.
Yes.
Okay. When we see something that doesn't quite right, we question it and we notice it and we take note of it, mental notes of it. So that is, I think, is how I do stuff. And I am always looking. I go over every bridge, every railroad track. I look down them. I look down every creek, every stream, every field. Again, I'm from Ohio and we have an abundance of deer. And I was a truck driver for almost 30 years. I never hit a deer. I never hit a deer in my car. I have this way, and I'm quite proud of it, to see what other folks don't because they're not paying attention. And I never hit a deer, but I'm telling you, I've seen hundreds of them run right in front of me. But and I'm always expecting a deer, you know, because this is Ohio. So every cornfield, every field you go through by, you better be looking for deer. But yeah, I just think I'm open to seeing things, and like I said, I'm not special or anything like that. I just am observant.
Yeah. Dirt Road Bigfoot put up a comment, and I'm going to show you. Apparently, y'all have never seen me play golf before.
Yeah, there's
Dirt
long
Road.
hit. There's nobody's ball over 2 miles.
You're not Tiger Woods, buddy, or John Daly. But no, I mean, when it comes to Salt Fork, people are simply amazed at the stuff that goes on there, especially when we have campouts up there at that camping area, you know, the primitive camp area there. And we're never disappointed. The only time I've been disappointed we never had anything happen was when it was a downpour. It rained 2 or 3 times during the day, Saturday, and then Saturday night when we were going to have the meeting, it rained so much that nobody came and nothing happened because it quit for like 15 minutes and then it would pour again.
Yeah.
But it was, I've never been disappointed there at Salt Fork.
Yeah, I caught Lyme disease there. Long story short, it rained so much, and this was before I had a camper. So I used to tent camp all the time. I was a lot younger, and I was closer to the Vkki Trail setup. I don't like being there because the water rolls downhill. So I'm in my tent, and I wake up, and I've got ticks all over me, and I'm freaking out. The weather and the moisture and all that drives those ticks out of the ground, and I think they didn't spray yet. Now they're starting to spray, and I had ticks everywhere. So I did the best I could to get them off, and wound up going home and getting a hot shower and found them all kinds of places, but didn't know it. And there was one in my ear. And after it buried itself into my ear, it wasn't more than a couple days. I got dizzy and I got really weird, lightheaded. I felt like I was intoxicated, and I don't even drink. Couldn't walk very well. My balance was everything. Went to my doctor, explained to her she says, "Where have you been and what did you do?" And I told her about it. I said, "Yeah, I had ticks all over me." So she's like, looks in my ear, says, "You got a traveler." She says, "I don't need to know anymore. I'm setting you up with doxycycline. And she didn't have to do a blood test or anything. She just set me up with that medication, and in a few days it was okay. But it scared me to death because I actually came down with Lyme disease.
Yeah, that's a bad thing. You're right. You know, there a couple of years ago we had that big mosquito problem because that campground does sit between two swamps.
Yes, it does.
And yeah, we were up there a few summers ago, and it was so bad that, man, you take a step and it was like a whole carpet just came up of mosquitoes, and they were biting you. And
oh yes, you don't want to leave the campfire. You welcome that.
Yeah, so I invested in tiki torches and I've got 2 gallons of that oil to put in them. So I'm going to make sure that if we come up there and there's mosquitoes around, that whole campground's probably going to be lit up with burning that oil.
Well, I finally broke down and bought one of those mosquito swatters with the electric grid. It looks like a tennis racket. I got one of those, and I also got one of those thermocells. So when we're sitting at a table or we're sitting in our chairs talking, my thermocell's on lit, and it works. It was one of the best ones I ever bought at Wally World, and it works.
Yeah, my wife, she's invested in a gallon of that grass seed oil or whatever it is. And she's already making spray bottles full of it. So we'll come out smelling like lemongrass the whole time.
Yeah, we'll have to get together. I think I can make April. I don't think I can make the one here in May, but or excuse me, June.
But yeah, is there anything that you would like to tell people about, you know, the investigations you've done about dogmen or Bigfoot? Is there anything special that you want to tell anybody about either one of them or both?
Okay. There's a lot of folks that are interested in the subject. A lot of folks want to learn and go out and research and do things on their own. My word of advice is silence. Is when you do go out in the woods, you got to discipline yourself to be quiet. You don't want to make weird sounds, and you don't want to be overly talkative and things like that. One of my best things that I did was I'll go sit in my lawn chair, and I'll be covered up so I don't get bitten. And I'll have my thermos of coffee and my cameras and stuff ready. And I just wait. And when I hear something strange, I'm telling myself, okay, it's what? Small critter, big critter, squatch. And that's about it. Don't get discouraged if you go out and you don't find anything. I don't find everything. I don't find anything every time I go out. Like I said, my observation and my discipline about being quiet has helped me tremendously.
Yes.
I do carry a weapon. There's going to be some of you that do, and there's going to be some of you that don't. I probably didn't tell you the story about how much time do we have?
We have as much time as you need, Colleen.
Yeah, I was with the Sosby group, and we were in the woods. This has been a few years ago. I don't know if you were here or not. This was Coshocton. And
no, I've never been to that one.
I'm in a clearing, carry my weapon, and I got my phone or my camera around my neck. So I walk an extremely dark night, and I'm walking, and I know by the blockage of the stars that I'm coming right up against the wood line. And I stopped, and I'm standing there and I'm listening. And like I said, I've got my 45 in one hand and my camera's in the other. All of a sudden, something hopped up in front of me and just let out this. And I thought, okay, that's not a snort. That's not a deer chort. Okay, we know what those sound like. I hear them all the time. No, this is loud. This has lungs, and it's vibrating off of me. So instead of confronting it or whatever I did, I walked backwards. I took about 10 backward steps because I knew there was nothing but field back there. And when I got a little far away, I did about and kept on going. And like I said, I had my weapon in my hand, but certainly didn't want to use it. And I never want to use it. I absolutely have no desire to shoot one of these things. I have it for rabid animals, self-protection, and if I need it, I'd rather have it there than not. But I think a lot of our members carry, and we do so responsibly. But that was the only time I really cared, and because I didn't know what was going to happen, I couldn't see it. I had no idea what it was. I got a good idea what it was, but I don't know what it was.
Well, let me ask you a question, Colleen. When it jumped up and it kind of half growled in that way?
Yeah, it was kind of like a big grunt.
Okay. Do you think it was just trying to scare you, or do you think it was trying to warn you were getting too close? Just your opinion.
It was trying to warn me I was getting close to the kids. And that is something I want everyone to know. If you're out and you're doing your thing and you feel that you're in danger or whatever, you're probably too close to the family unit. They have children. I mean, they have kids.
Yeah.
We've been talking about that. And if you get too close to the family unit, the watchers are going to let you know. Doesn't mean they're going to try to hurt you, but they want you out of that area because they guard those children and those mamas. They'll guard them with their life. Here's why. I hear different stories. Let me back up. I hear that dogmen get along wonderful with the Squatch, and then I hear that the Squatch hate the dogmen because the dogmen will try to eat and kill Bigfoot young. I don't know. I don't know if that's true, but that's what I've been told and what I've read. But it makes a lot of sense, especially if they're not happy with one another. So they try to keep dogmen away from their area. And I'm not talking these big, huge family units. I'm not talking like, whole clans of them, because there's only supposed to be 1,000 or so of them in the state of Ohio. But I think they are in clans of 4 or 5, especially family units with a watcher or two guarding 1 or 2 family units. That can't be too inconceivable. In fact, it makes perfect sense. The adult males are the ones that go out and hunt and gather. They're responsible for feeding the clan. And the watchers are responsible for watching over the clan. I think the mamas basically take care of the children and maybe do some food, things like that. But that's it.
Yeah. I'll tell you the thing that happened to me in North Carolina here a few years ago. We had went down to do an investigation at a lady's house. Me and my wife went, and we were in North Carolina, and we're friends with this lady. And she said she has Bigfoot activity at her home. And we went down there, and we got down there on Friday. And Saturday morning, we showed up at her place and we sat around and talked. And she was telling me all that was going on. And it got to about 2 or 3 o'clock in the afternoon. I said, well, what do y'all want to do about dinner? You just want to go grab something together? Do you want to cook here, or what would you like to do? And she wanted to cook us dinner. So her and my wife took my pickup. Well, it's not mine. It's I drive it. My wife her name's on it too. And they went to the grocery store. While they were gone, I had every intention of putting on my 40 caliber that I always carry with me. Well, I had my machete with me, and I grabbed it, and my wife asked me a question. I completely forgot the handgun. So when they left, I went behind the house and went down one side of the bamboo that's right behind her house. I had to cut my way through this. This stuff is 13, 14 foot tall. And underneath of it, there's no sunlight. It's just that thick. And I went down to a farm that's behind the house, and they had guineas and llamas and mules or jackasses or whatever they had there in the field. And they had cattle there too. And I came back up the other side. And when I came back up the other side, I was against the wood line. And it started getting thick in the woods. And I got almost to the bamboo, and I heard thump, 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 thump. I spun around, and I see a Bigfoot on all four. It was a female. Ooh. You could clearly tell that it was a female. Her upper part was hanging down, and she came running out of that brush, growling at me. And why I believe I was too close to where they had their young hidden, and she was there tending to the young, and I scared her by being that close, and she was upset with me. And I pulled out my machete and pointed at her, and the only thing I said to her, and I said in simple English, in a stern voice, "You come over here. One of us is leaving. The other one ain't leaving. And I'm the one that's going to be leaving." She stopped at that point.
I don't want to mess with them. I'm going to take them off.
And people think, well, they don't understand us, but they do. I believe they are able to understand English language. And she stopped. Yes. I squared up and did everything that a big alpha male would do to you. And she stopped and kind of leaned on one arm and kind of pushed off on the other one, and did that a couple of times, leaned back and forth. And I said, "I'm not kidding. If you come over here, you come any further, I'm going to slice you and dice you, and it's not going to be fun." And she started backing up. She never turned around, but she backed up on all fours, never stood up, just backed up on all fours, and then turned and jumped into the brush. And I heard her go through the brush, and she stopped in there probably 30, 40 yards into the brush. And she just kind of, and that was all she did. I turned around and went through the bamboo, got back to the house, and I got there just a few minutes before my wife and the lady from North Carolina got back. And when they got back, I never said nothing to them. And then they went in and fixed dinner. And when we were sitting down eating, I told my wife and her what happened. And I got a stern talking to by my wife never to do that again. That was the only time that I've really was worried, because even though she was probably 6 to 7 foot tall, and never, just judging by, her body length, her upper body length, and where her legs was at, and the length of her legs, I'm
Mm-hmm.
saying she was probably six something, somewhere close to 7 feet. And you're right. She didn't have a lot of hair on her, and it was it's in North Carolina, and it was hot. So I think in the
Mm-hmm.
summertime they lose that under hair that's underneath of them that's close to their body. Uh,
That could be.
I can't prove it, but that's just my theory.
Um, well, I've got pictures of them that were taken in the early spring after winter. And you know how their hair
Mhm.
can look really shaggy, really
Yeah,
unkempt. And
right.
then sometimes later, you'll see pictures of them taken where their hair is actually almost manicured.
Yes.
That's true. I do believe that they have a thicker winter coat. It's not oily. Let's put it that way. At that time of year, it has not oiled up yet. But
Right.
later on in the they start to oil up, and that gives them that slick appearance.
Yes. So yeah, I know where you're coming from, and I've seen them do some of the weirdest things. Heck, I've had trees pushed over on me. I got knocked off of
Oh yeah.
had to go around a mud hole and walked up on the bank, and a tree come down, and the top of the tree just glanced me, and it was enough to knock me over. I end up in the mud hole, and when I stood up,
Mm.
I was armed, and I could hear this thing what sounded like it was laughing at me, and
Uh,
there was no little Bigfoot that pushed that tree over because it was a pretty good sized
right.
tree.
Did you hear about what happened with the Sosby guys? It was a couple of years, 3 years ago now, where we were on 51, and
Mm-hmm.
we made the come back to one, and I can't remember the road number of the road that goes down the hill to the cul-de-sac. Did you
Yeah.
hear about the tree? We went
No, I
down the
did not.
road. Oh, we went down the road, went to the cul-de-sac, stopped, listened for a while, decided nothing's happening. We're all going to leave. We're trying to come back up
Uh-huh.
the hill out of the cul-de-sac, and there is a tree knocked down in front of us, blocking us in. And it just so happened there was a one guy, and I can't remember his name. You might know him. He has the big fifth wheel camper that he brings. Um,
Right.
God, I can't think of it. I think I would.
I
He
don't
has a
know. I don't
chainsaw.
know his name.
Okay, he had a chainsaw on his truck, and enough
Mm-hmm.
people started cutting the tree and moving the pieces of it so that all the vehicles could get back up the hill. I remember that. I measured. I'm going to say 10 or 11 inches in diameter. It wasn't a huge tree, but it was a big enough tree that something knocked it down. I didn't think that there was anything out there that could rip a tree root system out of the ground and push it over, but it did. And I don't remember any rain. I don't remember any wind, nothing. It was still and beautiful outside.
Hmm.
But yeah,
Well,
talk
they'll
to
do
the
that.
people the next time. Um,
They'll do that.
but I'd like to know what has the strength to do that. That's the thing. It's kind of like you hear stories about those uprooted trees that turned upside down. What's going to
Well, they're
do
not
that?
stories. I hate
But
to
no,
tell
I
you
know.
this, Colleen. They're not stories. I've seen them here
Yeah,
in
it's
West
like,
Virginia and Pennsylvania.
what can do that? What has
The
the
big
strength to?
males,
Yeah. Oh my God. Like I'm
the
small
big
King Kong.
alphas.
Hmm.
Um,
Yeah.
and
Don't want to be getting into that.
they do that to warn other Bigfoot. It's a show of strength.
Okay.
That's all it is.
Well, they do markers. And I've
Yes.
seen and found lots of them myself. Like, you ever see or hear of a rock stack?
Yeah. I've seen a
Like
bunch of
you have a pile of rocks, like flatter
them. Hmm.
type shale rocks, where
Hmm.
one big one, and then you have just a couple inches smaller, and then you might have one or more
Hmm.
smaller ones stacked on top. I still
Right.
say to this day that is a sign of. Okay, it could either be one juvenile, two, or three juveniles. Well, they're going to mark that with those stones. We find
Mm-hmm.
those. They're not scary, but they're kind of like, wait a minute, where'd this come from? Who did this? But yeah, they are family strength markers. It's just like when you see those pictures of the sticks that are bent over, or the saplings and that are bent over and pinned to the ground with a piece of wood or another log. All right, pinning it to
Right.
the ground always necessarily means something did it. That kind of stuff can happen in nature, but it's kind of
Yes.
rare. There's lots of that going on. Well, I still say what they do in the winter when they do that is they get tree branches and pine tree boughs and that and other things, and they lay those over top of those arches that they built. So they have
Mm-hmm.
some kind of, and then come after winter, those other things decay and they're gone.
Right.
Thing left is the arch. I
Yep.
still say, because these things aren't stupid. There's no way
No.
they can by being around as long as they have been. And when you said about the juveniles and the babies, they act a lot like the deer in that concern. When you're out in the woods and you find a fallen tree or a big log, and sometimes you find a little fawn nestled in the leaves and stuff on the other side of it, right? And you're
Mm-hmm.
thinking, oh, poor little guy, you're where's your mama? Mama's around, she's getting food. But she puts that little fawn in that bed of leaves and hides her from things just like
Mm-hmm.
they do. So it's animal behavior.
Well, here's a little thing you might want to look into. The next time that you find a tree twist that
Mm-hmm.
is in the 7, 8 foot, 10 foot range, if you look at that tree twist and you look where the twist is, because they'll twist it and break it off and then they'll hang it down. Don't follow the part that's hung down. Look at the tree twist and look and see if there isn't another marker, because
Okay.
they put them in a line for a reason. It either lines them out for where they are staying, or it'll line them out for food sources or water sources. And over 40 years and watching a clan for 5 years in that 40 years,
Mm-hmm.
that's something that I saw the big male, the big alpha male, the ones that are close to that 1,000 pound or over 1,000 pound mark. I've seen him do that a few times, and it always led to where they were going to get water, a spring, um, or where they would go hunting, or they would find certain roots and berries that they would eat. And yeah, they're not stupid. People consider Bigfoot to be an animal that doesn't can't figure problems out. And personally, I believe Bigfoot are smart enough to be on the same level as human beings.
Or very close to it. Yes, I totally agree with that.
Yeah.
What else was I
So
gonna say? Yeah, when you next time you're there at the campground, we'll drive around some of those places that I know about.
yeah,
We'll either do it in the daytime, we do it at pitch black, 2 o'clock in the morning. And
I
when
don't
you're
care.
on 52, and you stop and you shut your lights off, it's dark. Yeah, I mean dark.
Yeah,
You won't
it's dark, dark.
stars, you won't see the moon. It's like God, that forest is so thick. But when we what we did, a lot of us would get in the back of a truck, and then we would drive, until we shut off and got everything
Mm-hmm.
quiet. So everybody's sitting in the back of a truck. There's woods coming right up to the side mirrors. You know, it's
Yep.
like, okay, reach out and do something. But that scares a lot of folks, but it's fun. What else was I gonna say? Ah, shoot! I said a lot of stuff. Can't think.
Well, let me ask you a question, Colleen. Have you been down? You know the road that runs under Hosek's Cave, where they
Yes.
said they've seen shadow people and they've seen Bigfoot crossing there.
Yes.
Have you been there at night and seen anything in that area?
Seen anything, but I've been there and got creeped out. And it's like, okay, we did this. We can go. Let's go somewhere else. Let's go up to the handicapped picnic area. Let's go do something else. Sit on the benches there at the handicapped picnic area.
Yeah.
And just sit and listen. That way, you got a group of people, and your vehicle's like only 20 feet away. But yeah, there's just so much stuff. You've probably heard stories about the strange lights in the woods.
Oh
Now
yeah.
we're on UFOs, which I don't like to do, but there's so many of those seen down there. People saying they've
Yeah.
seen those crazy lights running around, flashing,
Hmm.
spinning. It's like, okay, what is it? I want to know, but I don't want to know.
Well, let me tell you about we were there was it last fall? No. Yeah, it was last fall. We were there at one of the Sotheby's events. I
Mm-hmm.
think it was in October.
Okay.
And where I get up so early, I was outside just piddling around the camper, and my wife was still asleep. And about 6 o'clock, she got up, and I walked in and I told her, I said, I'm going to take a walk. I'm just restless. I just want to take a walk. And you know that trail that goes up the hill towards those fields on the
Yes,
top? Well, when you get
absolutely.
halfway up, they had cut a trail out about halfway up, and I walked at that trail. Well, now there's brush that's
Mm-hmm.
taller than I am on both sides, briars and everything else. And
Right.
I
I
probably
walked up there.
walked out there. You've been out there before?
Walked up that trail one time. Walked into that
Hmm.
field. Walked around. Looked around. I it was daytime. It wasn't nighttime,
Hmm.
but I still got creeped out. I don't know if I wanted to be in
Yeah.
that area, especially by myself.
Well, see, I
In
walked up
fact,
there
the
all
picture,
alone.
the pictures that I'm going to send you, where I got that
Hmm.
one looking at, that's where that
Hmm.
was. It was right next to that trailhead or that trail. I
Hmm.
keep saying trailhead. The Buckeye trailhead is right down from where I got that watcher.
Yeah. Well, I walked up that trail that cut off to the left about halfway up,
Mm-hmm.
and I got around there about 200 yards where the hill comes around. It cuts back around to the right, and there's that big hollow that goes through there. And I stopped, and I had my handgun on my hip, and I'm standing there, and I'm just kind of looking around to see if I can see any markers, or looking to see if I can see any where something large has been crossing that path. And I took another step, and something jumped up. I never got to see it. It jumped up and took off running up the hill. So when it took off running up the hill, now it ran off on 2 feet, not four, not on four
Okay.
hooves, not 4 feet. I've been hunting since I was 7 years old, and I know the difference. I've heard them run off. I've heard deer run. I've heard bear run off. I've heard squirrels, turkeys, whatever. And this was 2 feet. This was not four. I bust through the
Uh-huh.
brush, and when I ran through the brush, I seen where 2 feet marks jumped up and saw the tracks going up the hill. Now, when I got back to camp, I informed a couple of the Sotheby's members, and they were like, well, we'll walk up there a little bit later. You okay?
Yeah, I'm fine.
Bless you.
Oh, God. The cats have been in, I can tell.
Oh. I told them, and then about an hour later, here come this hunter that was parked there. He'd went up there to go bow hunting, carrying his stand, and he come off the hill, and somebody said something to him. Well, why are you quitting so early? He said something come running up the hill, ran up just underneath of me through the brush, and I couldn't see what it was, but it stopped and it growled at me. He said, that's no deer. So he, shortly after it walked off, he climbed down with his climber, picked up everything that he had, and came down, and he went home. He never saw it either, but I'm pretty sure I know what it was. It wasn't a normal, everyday animal. It was something on 2 feet, big and hairy.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I will never not say that they're not down there. Never. I know they are. I just, why would Salt Fork, sell all this PF merchandise? And why would they call Bigfoot Ridge?
Yeah. Yeah, there is definite Bigfoot in Salt Fork. If you go to the campgrounds, you usually don't have anything happen. I don't know how that happens because they're all over the place.
It's those trails that are down past the public campgrounds, like Gun Loop Trail, and whatever the other names is. I don't remember. But yeah, that's down there where they see them. They're actually situated between Bigfoot Ridge and the lodge. And all right, another one too. If you know where Bigfoot Ridge is, when you go down to the end and the cul-de-sac, and then you see the trail that goes down the hill, it goes to that Gibson Farm ruins. Okay. I've been there with Tim Stover and a few others, and we've gone all the way down, checked out the old farmstead and all that, and the foundations. And then you have to kind of walk uphill. Well, off to your right, it's all scrub and brush and some trees. It's not thick forest right there. And it goes up a hillside. We were there, and we had something trail us as we were going back up the hillside on that path, and you could hear it, and it was to the right, maybe 30 or 40 yards, and it was following us up the hillside, talking to one another, grunting, making just like whispering sounds, like I don't know where they're from, but hikers, because they're in the weeds and woods and brush, and they're following us up the hill, and you can hear them, and it's like, what in the world is that? Just like I was at when you're going to the lodge, there's another area where people like to go on the hike. It goes up to what's it called? The knob, the point. Come on, think. Morgan's Knob.
Yes.
All right. You have to go through the pond, and then you follow that trail, and it intersects with the horse trail, and then you have to climb up the hillside and all that. That's where there's been several people have seen them. I was once with somebody, and we kind of met at the intersection of all the trails, and they were scared to death because she was telling me that they just saw something from around the tree trunk, and they didn't know what it was. Well, backing up, I was with Tim Stover, and it was a night hike investigation, and there was a couple other people, and we were coming back down, and Tim had his night vision, and I had the big ear, that parabolic microphone. And believe me, they work. Take care of them, they work. So I'm walking down this thing, and we hear these clacking rocks and like smacking like sticks, but not really, really loud. And then we hear this mumble, this sound of like somebody was talking, trying to speak inside a box or something. It was weird. This was late or early in the morning, and there was nobody around. There was no hikers. There's nothing. And we heard this sound, and I got it in the parabolic mic. And first off, I want to say that these squatches speak in long vowels, and they have some consonants in their vocabulary. Any sound those starts with a W, because the W is easy to pronounce. A, E, and maybe a couple other vowels. But I heard loud as can be, a waka, a waka, a waka. And I'm thinking, okay, what am I hearing? What am I hearing? I'm hearing an A, I'm hearing a W, a waka. And then I look up some Indian stuff, and I find the word awaka means danger. So did these things warn each other that we were coming? Did they really say danger to each other? But I'll never forget it. Never forget it. Awaka, awaka. Yeah. And there were things they said, but it's like they're saying something. I don't know what, but they are saying something.
Yeah. Well, Colleen, we've been on here for over 2 hours now. And I've loved every minute of it. Don't regret it one bit. It's been informative to me about dog men and the stuff you've seen when it comes to Bigfoot. It answers. Hopefully, you've answered some questions for people that are watching.
I hope so. And our viewers enjoyed it.
I'm pretty sure that they have. Tammy said she could listen to you all night. Maybe, Tammy, you ought to send me your phone number and I'll give it to Colleen, and y'all can, if that's all right with you, talk on the phone for hours.
And we can talk a little bit, and if you want to see some photographs, I will gladly share you some photographs. I will not show the dog pictures.
Right. But Colleen, I appreciate you coming on such short notice. And I hate that Miss Vkki's not feeling well. And you have been very informative, and you have been a pleasure to talk to tonight. And I thank you for it.
You too. You're welcome.
All right, Tammy.
And I'll see you at the campground.
Yes, ma'am. You sure will. 1 month soon, I hope. We'll go out and play in the woods at night.
Yep. You'll pull in, you're going to see a gray Colorado and a little R-Pod.
Well, when you see a big red Dodge 3/4 ton pulling a Rockwood camper, that's me.
Okay, cool.
All righty. Colleen, thank you again. I really appreciate it. It's been fun.
Okay, great. All right, thank you. Good night, everyone. Bye.
Bye. All right, everybody. That was Colleen. She's a wonderful lady. She's very informative. She knows a lot about Bigfoot, and she knows a lot about dog men. If you have questions for her, after the video post, you can put them in the comments, and I'm sure Colleen will take a look at them and send you an answer. And if you want to talk to her, contact me and I'll give you her phone number, and you can give her a call and talk to her about either one of the cryptid that she knows about. And I want to thank all of y'all for coming and being here tonight, and I appreciate it from the bottom of my heart. May every one of y'all be blessed and stay blessed throughout all of your lives. We'll see y'all later. Bye bye.